The bells of St. Mary's Basilica ring out in the city of Kraków, a former royal capital of Poland and seen by many as the cultural heart of the country. The center of Krakow's magnificent old town has been on the UNESCO World Heritage List since 1978, and it's here where a dedicated team is working to create the Europa Nostra heritage hub for Central and Eastern Europe. But just what is Europa Nostra and its heritage hub in Kraków? I'm John Beauchamp, and welcome to this podcast where we'll be exploring the workings of the European Heritage Hub project. Europa Nostra is a pan-European network of civil society organizations formed in the 1960s which advocates for the protection, management and promotion of cultural and natural heritage across Europe. While the organization is based in The Hague and has an office in Brussels, in recent years the scope of all its operations has widened to include the functioning of a number of heritage hubs to be closer to Europe in the wider heritage context. Dr. Katarzyna Jagodzińska is head of the Europa Nostra Kraków Heritage Hub.
Europa Nostra Heritage Hub in Krakow is a regional center of Europa Nostra. We are located in Krakow and our operations deal with the whole region of Central and Eastern Europe. Apart from Poland, it's the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, the East, Ukraine and Belarus, and Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. We are realizing the aims of Europa Nostra, which is mostly promoting best practices in the area of heritage, culture and natural in all those countries. Our language of operation is English, but it's very tricky to approach organizations and institutions with English. So we always look for facilitators, national facilitators in all those countries so that our voice can be heard better. We were established in July 2022. The reason why the center was created is that from the perspective of the center of Europe, of The Hague, where the headquarters of Europa Nostra are located, it's very difficult to see everything, to know everyone. So our role is to get to know the region, is to get to know regional organizations and individuals who are working in the field of heritage, to know what they are doing, to know what are the challenges, what are the prospects, what are the boundaries, and to try to find solutions, to try to connect, try to initiate projects, initiate programs within the region, but also connect the region with the rest of Europe.
Secretary General of Europa Nostra, Śnieżka Kwietlik-Mihajlowicz, underlines the reasons for establishing the Kraków Hub.
For quite some time already, when I was touring Europe, meeting our members, giving awards, visiting endangered heritage, there was response, why are you having only you are a European organization and you have only headquarters in The Hague and an office in Brussels, so very much northwest oriented. People started asking questions, are you truly a pan-European organization? And then also with these processes in Europe where we have, in the last decade, a number of movements, political movements or social movements, questioning Europe, being skeptical about Europe, even being against Europe. Europe, meaning the institutions, the leaders, but also civil society, we all realize that somehow there is really a gap. There is a dangerous gap between the functioning of the European institution and the perception that Brussels is deciding on things. And it's Brussels, Luxembourg, Strasbourg, that's where it is at. And that the rest of Europe, that it was part also of the European Union, was somehow feeling that it was far too remote and that the sort of ownership of the European project was questioned. This is the moment that people were saying, yes, we are all periphery and Brussels in the center. And then I said to myself, especially when you are an organization that has a name, Europa Nostra, and that depends also on voluntary engagement and action of our members who are active everywhere in Europe, not only in big cities and small cities. Then suddenly I said, what if Krakow is the center and Brussels is the periphery? Or what if Lisbon is the center and Brussels is the periphery? So this whole also sort of looking into how we have to organize our network, plus with all the developments of the digital technology and all the opportunity, the facilities that we got to communicate in a non-expensive way with all parts of Europe, that I said to myself, we have to enter in a new era and we have to organize ourselves in a different way. We have to tap into the knowledge, into the networks of our members on the ground. And of course, we have to keep a strong presence in Brussels. That's no doubt about that. But to add to this presence in Brussels with our headquarters in The Hague, that historically we are still keeping, but that would be the way to, in a very short period of time, get a much bigger outreach, much bigger impact, and also to, in a sense, decentralize the way our network is operated, and so identify a number of places where we have trusted partners and where we know that there is a knowledge and network like the one in Krakow, and in that way give a sort of a new dynamic to Europa Nostra. I must say, and so then I came here to participate in the Open Eyes Economy Summit. I think that's how it's called. I was invited. I was very surprised that somebody could organize an Open Eyes Economy Summit, would invite the Secretary General of Europa Nostra to Krakow to speak, to be one of the keynote speakers to all that in a distinguished gathering of people with strong knowledge of economy. And so there, in conversation with the city, with ICC, with particularly Professor Jacek Purchla, our vice president, somebody that I met from day one when I got involved in Europa Nostra in 91, but I think he joined in 90. He's 1 year earlier in Europa Nostra, but more or less we are sort of the same generation. And so we have been jointly contributing to this whole development, European development. He with his strong position with the International Cultural Center that he has created and he was leading for so many years in Europa Nostra. And then we said, we have to do something about this very special relationship between Europa Nostra and Krakow, and in conversation with the city, with the mayor, and also with Robert Piaskowski, who is plenipotentiary of the mayor for culture, we somehow composed that model that we successfully launched here in Krakow. And then the moment we started talking about that, other people started saying, oh, already the idea, we got the confirmation very quickly that it's going to get more people enthusiastic, to get engaged in a stronger way, and also to get the support of the cities, because the cities were proud to say, oh, so then the regional heritage hub of Europa Nostra will be in our cities. It is a responsibility, honor, but even more a responsibility.
Europa Nostra has a number of key activities which aim to promote and protect cultural and natural heritage across Europe. One of the ways in which the organization raises awareness of cultural heritage is an annual award which highlights best practices, conservation and enhancement of tangible and intangible cultural heritage, as well as harnessing shared experiences in the field across Europe. Snežka Kvetlik-Mihailović.
These 30 every year are like a sort of representative sample of an extraordinary variety of projects, from small to big: religious heritage, vernacular heritage, archaeology, cultural landscape, gardens. So first of all types of heritage are covered, and then all the various types of activities. And indeed, this is something that at the beginning of existence of our board, the focus was indeed very much on conservation projects. They remain a very important focus, and main bulk are still the conservation projects, and the one that we will be celebrating tonight in St. Mary's Basilica, Notre Dame de Krakow, is precisely one of those outstanding conservation projects that we want to promote and want to encourage others to follow their power of example.
One of Europa Nostra's key programs is called The Seven Most Endangered, which identifies the most vulnerable cultural heritage sites. Snežka Kvetlik-Mihailović explains how the Krakow Heritage Hub will be involved in the program.
This is also now 10th anniversary of that work, and I very much hope that also with the help of the Krakow Hub for the Central and Eastern Europe will help us to identify on one side the endangered site, and collectively we can sort of mobilize the public and private support for saving those sites. First of all, understanding the danger and jointly helping to find the solutions, the lasting solutions for a sustainable future of these places. And on the other side, we count very much also on the hub to help us identify success stories, not just in Poland, but in the region of Central and Eastern Europe, because we definitely, the balance somehow in the whole of Europe, we need to have Central and Eastern Europe, Southeast Europe be present much more through its history, through its heritage. In that sense, the reunification of Europe has not yet been really completed, because it's not enough to reunify the markets. You need to have not a unification, but reunification of our memories, having knowledge of our joint collective history, our heritage, our culture. There is a lot to be invested to learn, not only West about the former East and vice versa, North about the South. This is investing in better knowledge of our history and heritage. First of all, we will discover that there are many more connections that we thought there are over the centuries. And that will also contribute. That was what we deeply believe. And I personally, that's something that is really my drive in my work in Europa Nostra, that we discover, in fact, that Europe is living in every single heritage site in Europe. It's living in this house where we are talking now, the headquarters of the Society of Friends of Krakow, History and Heritage. It is a European story. St. Mary's Basilica and its altar is a European story. The whole story of this city is a European story. And these stories we need to tell more in order to also develop a stronger sense of belonging, not just to your city and your country, but also to Europe. And in that sense, a shared responsibility for Europe as well. The whole European project, it's something that has brought peace to Europe.
Next to two major programs, being the European Heritage Awards, Europa Nostra Awards, and the Seven Most Endangered program, in 2023, Europa Nostra, in a consortium of leading heritage organizations in Europe, launched the major project called the European Heritage Hub, funded by the European Commission. Andrew Potts is a member of the European Heritage Hub and Climate Heritage Network. He identifies some of the key policies and activities which led to the creation of the Heritage Hub project, as well as its aims.
The hub has big aspirations. The European Heritage Hub is a pilot project of the EU looking at better organizing efforts across the cultural heritage community in Europe with a focus on the transformation of Europe occurring because of climate change, because of digital revolution, and because of social changes like migration. So looking at green transformation, digital transformation, and social transformation, each and then together. So collectively we call this triple transformation. And the hub starts with the idea that all three of these transformations, green, social, and digital, have important culture and heritage components. That cultural heritage is a guide to how communities change, how they transform. It's a barrier, it's a driver, it intersects with it in all sorts of different ways. And what the hub aspires to do is collect a lot of existing practices, research, and help scale that up and out so that heritage methodologies, heritage practice, the engagement of heritage by government takes better account of the role culture and heritage can play in these transformations. One of the ideas of that was behind the creation of the hub is that there is already a lot of good work on these topics being done across Europe. Important research that has been done, good case studies, pilot projects, so many activities. And that maybe the most important thing to do right now is to try to identify the good research, the good case studies, the good projects that have already been done and contribute to scaling them up and out.
The Heritage Hub pilot project was launched in 2023 with the support of the European Commission. This ambitious project is set to gather diverse expertise and pool resources to mobilize and strengthen cultural heritage-driven movements in Europe. Meanwhile, Dr. Katarzyna Jagodzińska explains the role of the Kraków Heritage Hub.
Our hub in Krakow is part of the project, and what we are about to do is to make the mapping of heritage organizations located in the whole region of Central and Eastern Europe. So what we are planning to do is to identify as many organizations there are, to get to know them, to learn what they are doing, what field actually they are exploring, what projects they are doing, why, how big they are, how many people are working, what's the structure, what's the funding, what are the barriers and what are the prospects of what they are doing, would they like to cooperate internationally, do they speak languages. So once we get to know them, we will be able to propose some projects in future. So this project of mapping basically will take more than a year. By the end of 2024, we plan to have a report with some recommendations, and grounded on that, we will initiate some projects with organizations that we will get to know in the whole process.
As the Kraków hub has its operations across the Central and Eastern European region, it will contribute a wealth of information and experiences to the European Heritage Hub project. Europa Nostra Secretary General Snežka Kvedlik-Mihajlović.
Given the fact that the overall objective of the European Heritage Hub is to do more, to promote more synergies, more peer learning, more sharing of knowledge and experience, this regional heritage hub that we created in Krakow, also in Athens, are in fact ideal partners that can help us to translate the ambition and the narrative of the European Heritage Hub to the specific needs and the specific context of Central Europe in particularly, but also wider Central and Eastern Europe. Now we can put this network into sort of in that wider European context and indeed, in particularly help us to identify all, who is who, through the very important work that the Krakow Hub will be doing for the mapping of civil society organizations in Central and Eastern Europe, because we all know that civil society is important, but we also need to have the evidence, and we need to know better who are the people, what kind of organization, what type of work, how can we help them. So this is going to be a very important work that Krakow Hub took the responsibility to organize, and a work that is not going to be only important for this region, because the methodology that will be developed we will be able to use it also for other regions in Europe. And definitely the colleagues in Athens can make the benefit of that, and then for the Balkans and for the Caucasus. Definitely, Ukraine will be covered by the mapping that Krakow is doing, and we all know how much we need also to invest in solidarity with heritage professionals, volunteers, organizations, in Ukraine, in the context of this brutal war that is still going on. So that means that indeed the Krakow Hub will be the place sort of animating a network. It will be helping us to understand better the complexities and the diversity also of the sort of heritage ecosystem, with a specific focus on civil society.
Europa Nostra partners not only with civil society organizations, but also with cities. The World Heritage listed city of Kraków is an important point of reference, a laboratory of sorts for a conversation on heritage, its potential, but also challenges.
Last but not least, the Krakow Hub, because of its strong relationship with the city of Krakow, this is a major asset. The city of Krakow, 45 years on the World Heritage List, the very first European city that was inscribed on the World Heritage City. And I'm here in Krakow to celebrate, also to be part of all the various events marking this important anniversary. But the city of Krakow that has done a mind-boggling work from the city totally neglected in the 70s. This link with the city of Krakow is vital. The city of Krakow is an example for Europe and for the world. And not only for World Heritage cities, because not all cities in Europe, historical city, can and will be inscribed on the World Heritage List. But they are nevertheless extraordinary historical cities. They are all telling a European story in addition to telling their local, regional, and national story. So within the hub, the whole European Heritage Hub project, with the help of our regional hubs like the Krakow one, we also want to tap into that power of cities and regions and to establish a much stronger alliance between the civil society organizations and local authorities in that movement that we need to further strengthen in order to assure the future for our past and the past for our future.
Earlier we heard from Andrew Potts, who touched upon climate issues in the sphere of cultural heritage. Apart from social and green transformations, another key policy area across the EU is harnessing the digital realm. This so-called triple transformation is touched upon by Alexandra Janus, a cultural anthropologist and researcher, when discussing the activities of the Kraków Heritage Hub.
I think there's great value in that, because I really believe strongly in data-driven activities. And I think for a newly established organization or entity, this is extremely important to know who we are representing and what are the needs of these groups, institutions, NGOs, and so on and so forth. So starting with mapping, I think, is a very smart way to have this data-driven approach. And I also think that, in this region, I think there is quite a big diversity of institutions. So an NGO can be a group of, or like an entity of 40 people, or it can be a small foundation or association with 3 people, all of them volunteers. And I think mapping that and understanding on what level of advancement when it comes to professionalization, digitization, and so on and so forth, on what level are these institutions and these organizations, I think is crucial to be able to then offer a program or a set of resources that can support what they do. And I also think for triple transformation that you already mentioned, I think this is also very important, because I think the mapping gives you the potential to actually then maybe, prevent some of smaller organizations that are less advanced in going, the difficult way and, and find shortcuts that we can recommend them. And I think especially with the digital, I like to see it as integral with the green and the social. And I think, after many years of like internet being our, everyday place where we conduct our lives, I think it's important to remember that this is not immaterial, that this actually has environmental impacts, also negative one, that we have to be mindful of, and that it can support social transformation and it can serve social good or common good. But it doesn't necessarily do that just by definition. And I think we really have to look at where these organizations and institutions are and then help them, start steer towards the triple transformation and help them embrace this more like holistic, integrated approach.
You can find out more information by visiting the Kraków Heritage Hub, as well as following a number of social media channels from Europa Nostra. You'll find everything you need in the show notes wherever you get your podcasts and online at heritagehubkraków.org. This has been a free-range production for the Europa Nostra Heritage Hub in Kraków. I'm John Beauchamp, and many thanks for listening.